scientists installed a camera in Michael's coffin for some research. When they checked the footage, they were shocked. Michael came from a wealthy family. His father was a real estate guru who also loved to collect ancient artifacts that were worth a lot of money on the black market. His mother was one of the top surgeons in the country. Despite having everything he needed, Michael was humble. He was a man of integrity who played his part in making the world a better, safer, and happy place. When Michael turned 18, his mother died of cancer, leaving him and his father alone. A few years later, his father remarried a beautiful woman who had a daughter named Sandra from a previous marriage. After the wedding, Michael decided to follow in his father's footsteps and pursue a career in real estate and artifact collection. He was quickly successful in these endeavors, showing a knack for business that he had inherited from his dad. Tragically, Michael's father passed away after a brief illness, leaving the young man lonely, miserable, and lost. Fortunately, though, he had a stepsister and stepmother by his side. For a while, Michael was skeptical about trusting them, but on many occasions, they demonstrated their love, sacrificing their time, resources, and happiness to make Michael happy and comfortable. So he eventually allowed them into his heart, and it seemed like one of the best decisions of his life. 6 months after his father's passing, Michael moved back into his parents' house, which he had inherited. He felt empty and guilty for living elsewhere, while his parents' house stood vacant. That's why he chose to make it his home again. The entire community was glad to see Michael back. Within a few months, the town recorded tremendous changes. Schools and roads were renovated and a small hospital was built. Michael also made donations to the less privileged and placed many kids on scholarships. Everyone was happy for the young man and their hearts blessed him daily. That was until one morning when the residents woke up to the shocking news that Michael was dead. His first stepsister Sandra had gone to visit him and found his dead body lying helplessly on the floor. Despite having a feeling that he was gone, she immediately rushed him to the hospital in the hope that her intuition was wrong. Unfortunately, it wasn't. The doctors confirmed that Michael was indeed dead. Despite their best efforts, the doctors couldn't determine the cause of his death. They explained the situation to Sandra and suggested an autopsy to get a definitive answer. In the nick of time, Sandra recalled that her brother had a heart condition, however mild. She subsequently provided medical records, diagnosing Michael with a cardiac issue, and explained that even though he was taking medication for it, his illness may have been what caused his death, hence she felt there was no need for an autopsy. Besides, Sandra knew that her brother had always been opposed to autopsies. He felt they violated the principle of human dignity. Thus, she was determined not to let them desecrate her beloved brother's beliefs. Before leaving the hospital, Sandra instructed that her brother's body be kept in the morgue till she figured out how to plan for his funeral. Throughout the night, Sandra was restless. She wanted to honor her brother one last time, so she went onto the internet to look for ways to do that. That was when she stumbled upon an article. It was a paper about scientists who were researching the dead. They would place them under supervision for a year before drawing their conclusions. Sandra knew the scientific research was the perfect way to honor her dead brother, who was passionate about making a difference in the world. That night, Sandra contacted the scientists and told them they could use her brother for their research. They were glad to hear from her. They sent her the necessary paperwork to sign, and they promised her a hefty compensation fee, which Sandra promised to give to the local orphanage. The next morning, Sandra organized the funeral for her brother. The church was full. That's to show how much people loved Michael. Before the corpse was placed in the coffin, the scientists fitted a camera to the sides of the casket. This camera would record and transmit footage directly to their computers for up to 1 year before the batteries ran out. To ensure that they received regular updates, they set the recording time at 7 p.m. every evening. The funeral service was a solemn affair, lasting up to an hour. By the end of it, everyone had swollen eyes from shedding so many tears. After the funeral, Sandra went to her brother's house, where she would now start living. Meanwhile, the scientists were eagerly awaiting 7 p.m. when the camera would record its first footage. They all gathered around the screen with anticipation to see what it would capture. As soon as the clock struck 7, the camera started transmitting a live feed. Within seconds of watching it, the scientists let out an astonished cry. What they saw was inexplicable. They immediately made a copy of the video and hurried out of the lab before heading to the police station. Neither of them had ever witnessed such a frightening incident. The following day around noon, Sandra was at her brother's house enjoying a glass of expensive tequila on the porch. Suddenly, she heard a siren sound in the distance, and before she could react, a police van pulled up in her front yard, nervously getting to her feet. She hurried over to meet them. "Hello, officer," she greeted, feigning a smile. Even a kid could have seen through the pretense. "We are here for one Miss Rita." One officer said, "Yes, I am Sandra. How may I be of help?" She replied nervously as her hands began to tremble, so she quickly hid them behind her back. Even before the police could state why they were at her house, Sandra began acting suspiciously. "What are you doing here? Do you have a search warrant?" she said. Then she quickly ran to the door and spread her arms wide, blocking the officers from entering, though they hadn't even attempted to go in yet. "I know my rights. There's nothing here," she continued screaming. Well, what happened next shocked the living daylights out of her. The police officers told Sandra she was wanted at the police station because they suspected she had something to do with her brother's death. Hearing those words, Sandra's heart leapt into her stomach and she immediately turned pale. The glass cup she was holding slipped from her grasp and shattered into 100 pieces. At that moment, she knew there was no point lying and pretending, so she decided to confess, hoping the truth would set her free. She confessed that her intention was never to take her brother's life. All she wanted were the valuable artifacts he was hoarding. She admitted to adding extra sleeping pills into his coffee and searching through the house for them, only to find nothing. When she returned to Michael's room in an attempt to threaten him into revealing where they were located, it became apparent that he wasn't breathing anymore. Knowing she would be charged with murder, she cooked up the story about Michael having a heart condition and even showed the doctors fake documents to back up her claims. And to further cover her tracks, she rejected an autopsy and instead gave Michael to the scientists for their research purpose. "I didn't mean to kill him, it was a mistake," Sandra pleaded, but just when she thought the situation couldn't get any worse, something else happened that shocked the living daylights out of her. Just like something out of a movie, the passenger door to the police car suddenly came open and Michael stepped out of it and towards his sister who was trembling uncontrollably. Sandra was filled with shock, unable to move or even blink. She stood still like a statue, desperately wishing it was all just a nightmare and that she would wake up the next minute. Unfortunately for her, it wasn't. Tonight before, the scientists had been stunned to find Michael struggling to escape from his coffin when they viewed the camera footage. The effect of the sleeping pills had worn off, so he woke up, horrified to find himself in a coffin, 6 feet under. The scientists immediately rushed to the police station and explained the situation. Along with the police officers, they dug up Michael's coffin and found him alive, struggling to breathe. They then rushed him to the hospital where he was stabilized. Turns out, Michael had been suspecting her stepsister for a while, so he had taken their artifacts to a warehouse and hid them there. Sandra pleaded with her brother to drop the case, but he knew she deserved no mercy. She was eventually charged to court and sentenced to prison. What do you think about Michael taking his stepsister to court? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.